Hey guys, as you might have seen in most of my recent gameplay videos, the path I've been taking in every one of them has been the Raptors solo start. In this video, I will go over the advantages of doing this path, explain how to do it correctly, and talk about the crucial mistakes to avoid. Overall, I've had great success with this path and I can only recommend you to start doing it no matter the elo. Realistically, there are probably games where this path is not optimal, but in my opinion, some of the advantages of this path will always be there, and to visualize the effect of this path, I will analyze a recent game of mine where the game plan went almost perfectly. If you feel like this video helped you, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more educational content. I've decided to create the Ultimate Ekko Jungle Guide as a series instead of one long video. This way you guys will get more content faster and more regularly, and I can go into greater detail for each topic. The first one I will create is gonna be about the different mindsets you should have when playing Ekko, and you can expect it to come out in the following week. Since some of you might not be familiar with the path, I will quickly explain it. With this pathing choice, you always start at the Raptors on your own and clear towards your Crocs. To do this, you need to skill Q, otherwise you won't be able to clear the Raptors efficiently. On level 2, you will skill W and clear the red buff. It is best to hold your smite for the Crocs, since then they will all split up together and you can clear the small ones with a single Q. After that, you either have the choice of recalling and buying a Dark Seal, or you can gank the lane you're closest to. On blue side, that is bot lane, and on red side, that is top lane. What you will notice with this pass is of course that it is not the same depending on which side of the map you play on. The reason I still always start at Raptors and never at Wolves is the fact that you will get the red buff. The red buff helps a lot in the early game to secure kills, while the blue buff does basically nothing. So what you will find with this path is that your game plan is usually different depending on which side you play on, but I will talk about that with the gameplay as a visual aid. Before talking about when you should do what, I want to quickly highlight the upsides of taking this path. The biggest reason I like it so much is because you can do it on your own. This way you're not giving any information about your starting position to the enemy team, and you're not holding back your teammates by forcing them to leash. In certain lane matchups this can make a huge difference, especially in higher elos. The next reason as to why I'm a fan of this path is because you have slightly altered gank timings that most laners do not expect. And to add on to that, you usually do it with an extra Dark Seal, so unless the enemy jungler took the same path, you will have a small item advantage in the early fights. This item advantage helps a champion like Ekko tremendously in being able to win fights in the early game. The only real downside of this path is that you can get invaded if the enemy jungler has information about your pathing, or you spend too much time trying to gank early. Let's dive into how this path looks in-game and talk about the different choices you need to make. When doing this path in a matchup where I don't think I will get invaded at level 2, I usually leave a ward in the pixel brush. You can do this by starting to recall at around 55 seconds and placing it in the last second before you're in base. In base, I will also get the red sweeper. Ignore the gameplay that transpired here. If I'm playing a matchup where I feel like the enemies might invade me early, such as Jarvan, Lee Sin, Shaco or Graves, then I usually leave a ward at the brush close to the red buff. This way I will get information on any invades early enough so my team has time to move and I won't be surprised. Make sure to hit all the raptors with your Q and proc as many passive stacks as possible. Usually you will be able to proc it on the big raptor as well as 3 small ones. Always make sure to kite the camps you're clearing as close as possible to the next one. As I said, I don't smite the red buff, since the Crocs will be cleared much smoother when you save smite for them. When you're at Crocs, make sure to look at the lane closest to you and see if you can gank them. As with a lot of choices in League, there are a lot of variables to think about here when deciding to gank or simply recall for a Dark Seal, and I think the 80-20 rule kind of applies here, and I would say that 80% of the time you should recall for a Dark Seal, and only around 20% of the time you should actually look for an early gank. Generally, on blue side, I'm more likely to look for an early gank since it will be on bot lane and there's a potential to get 2 kills instead of 1. The best opportunity to early gank is of course when the enemies are massively overextended and preferably low HP. The line I visualize in my head to decide if I gank or not is this one. Another gank option if the enemies are not overextended and your laners are pushing is the lane gank. This is something I only ever do if I feel like my bot lane is the only win condition or features champions like Draven that can snowball extremely hard. Doing the lane gank and spending some time hovering your bot lane can also help to counter gank an early gank from the enemy jungle. The big downside of doing this is that it is a huge time investment, and if you get spotted or the gank is unsuccessful, you can get punished by an invade. As I said, there are many variables at play here, and I think unless you have a really good grasp on the lane states, matchups and overall win condition, I would generally advise against going for the lane ganks and only gank if the enemies overextend. In this game, as in most of the games, I simply recall and get a Dark Seal since the enemy bot lane is quite far back and very healthy. As you can see while running out of base, I'm looking top to see how the lane plays out. This is super important to decide if you're gonna go there right away or clear some of your camps first. Just as a quick side note, since I go for the gank here instead of clearing, if you clear the Grump, Blue and the Crab, you will be level 4. So doing this path you should usually leave your wolves up to have better tempo. Also, if you clear wolves, blue and crab, you won't be level 4. In some games you will also see that the enemy top is pushing the wave under the tower and then goes for a ward in the river. If that happens, simply clear your jungle or look for a mid gank or jump over the wall in the herald pit and gank from behind. In this game the Vi goes for an early mid gank, so I feel the need to hover around there for a couple of seconds. This won't happen in most games, but if it does, make sure to react to it. The way you need to think about this path is that you have the tempo advantage since you have an early Dark Seal, and because of that you have a bit more freedom to try and impact your lanes and let the jungle camp sit for some time. As you can see, after the Vi is not getting baited into a fight in mid, I look top straight away. At this point the top laners have actually fought a bit, so the lane looks gankable. The wave is quite big however, and my Mundo doesn't think we can kill Darius, so he doesn't help me. However, even this gank was overall successful in my opinion, since it helps out my Mundo tremendously in being able to play the lane safely. By this time the crab is coming up, so I go for it right away. At this point you need to be a little bit careful since you're underleveled. I know however that the crab will be uncontested since the Vi cleared her top side, and going for the crab first instead of my own camps gets rewarded heavily in this game, since I'm close enough to help my Katarina in the 2v2 because of it. After the fight I go straight to her raptors and steal them away, since I know that they should be respawned by this time. Even if you don't have the awareness to know that they have respawned by this time, you should usually just check it really quickly. Ekko is extremely good at stealing them away, and doing so is how you create big level advantages in the jungle. After stealing the raptors, you can see my first instinct is to get level 4 from one of my camps. However, I look top again and decide that Darius is low enough to gank, and I might even get the level up from a minion. One general thing that is really important here after the gank that has nothing to do with the past is that I am helping my Mundo to shove in the wave. Ekko is probably the best jungler at helping laners shove in waves, and it makes such a huge difference. Since now the Mundo is able to get a good recall and Darius loses a lot of minions. The extra XP and gold from the waves is also a welcome bonus for a carry champion like Ekko. Since I have such a massive amount of gold here, I decide to recall. Usually you will have cleared your topside by this point and not gotten 3 kills, so this is definitely not the norm. Going for the recall here is the right choice in my opinion, since it will enable me to clear the jungle super fast and also stay on the map for a long time afterwards. Also, I won't waste the blue buff duration walking out of base. You can also see that I choose to go in debt for the alternator. I'm sure you've heard the expression the rich get richer, and I think you can apply this to futures market. If you're in a position where you're already really strong and you know that you'll be able to generate gold easily, then you should always invest in your own abilities and make sure you're as strong as possible. In this game the plan is basically perfect, since the only treasure hunter stacks I'm missing are the ones on bot lane, and I'm looking to path there anyways. One big mistake I made here was getting greedy and going for the crab instead of bot right away. As you can see, the Vi is there, and had I pathed there right away, I might have been able to clean up some of those kills. One nice thing about this path that isn't really highlighted in this game is the way in which your camps respawn. Since you started at raptors and cleared down, they will respawn in that order again. Oftentimes you will find that when you start clearing downwards from your top side, the raptors are about to respawn. Now, since I'm incredibly strong with my items and 6 Dark Seal stacks, the dragon is basically uncontestable for the enemies. One general thing I also want you to notice is that I press tab all the time when I'm not fighting. In all of my recent coaching sessions I've noticed that this is something a lot of people don't do nearly enough. However, it is super important to really understand what is going on in the game and be able to make the right choices. After clearing the Drake, I want to continue my game plan of collecting the last treasure hunter stacks and ping for the bot dive. Since the enemy bot lane doesn't respect me being around however, we're able to simply engage through the river. Sadly, I got greedy and engaged on the Lulu because I thought we would be able to get both of them here. Afterwards, I'm not really sure where to commit, so I kind of get lost in between bot and mid lane and don't help either of them. However, I'm still looking to kill the bot lane, and since my bot side camps have come up again, I decide to quickly clear them towards my bot lane and look for a lane gank. These kinds of ganks often work since the enemies assume you need to be on the other side of the map after ganking them recently. As you can see, the enemy bot lane is completely unsuspecting and I'm able to stun both of them in my W. At this point the game is in our firm control. As you can see, when I'm walking out of base towards my top side, I always look at the lanes first and see if I can have an impact there. Generally, this is how you should go about jungling, since the camps usually will be available to clear afterwards as well. At this point it is super important to not neglect your jungle clear. A lot of people, myself included, often get baited into fighting over and over again. However, that is a very coin flippy way of playing the game, since simply taking your jungle is ensuring that you will win the game and stay very far ahead. Optimally, you can clear the whole jungle without getting interrupted, since the jungle camps will also respawn with good timings close to each other, so you can clear them again. If the enemies hadn't surrendered at 15 here, it is not unlikely that I would have hit around 10 CS per minute this game due to how good my pathing was. Since we're very ahead and there's no pressure to force any more plays, I'm allowed to simply clear my whole jungle and then see if I'm able to get something afterwards. Their bot lane is quite good at disengaging, so we don't manage to kill them right away. However, the Jinx disrespects Samira, so we get her eventually. The Vi shows up at their tower, and since all my abilities are up, I decide to help my bot lane out in diving her. One thing I want to highlight in this fight is how I made sure not to proc my passive while the Vi was invulnerable. If you play against champions with damage reduction in their kit such as Warwick or Bel'Veth, make sure to proc the passive when it is not active. The passive proc is Ekko's biggest damage source, so missing out on that would have made me unable to kill the Vi in this fight. In the end, the enemy bot lane gets baited into another fight and dies, so they decide to surrender the game. I hope this video showed you why this pathing can be so effective. As I said, since I always started raptors, the game plan is usually slightly different on red side. Generally, I would say the biggest difference is that I will go for the early gank before the dark seal even less. Another thing you might need to think about is that the river on bot side is warded more frequently, since there are 2 players here for each team, so going for lane ganks when coming out of base is often more effective. Overall, this path is one that is not super complicated and is quite consistent, so I can only recommend everyone to try it out for yourselves. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like, and if you want to see me play live, you can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Ekkoliner. Also be sure to join my Discord with the link in the description. Starting in May, I will be doing monthly giveaways during my livestream for a 1-hour coaching session. And with that, have a great day my fellow Ekko enjoyers.